Ji-hyun receives her 3 tears and the scheduler is impressed, commenting that she must have lived a meaningful life after all. Ji-hyun, still in shock, expresses disbelief, saying there's no one who would cry for her. The scheduler reassures her, explaining that it's the ability to change minds and hearts that defines humanity. At heaven, Manager O finds Yi-kyung leaving, and she tells him she has no reason to stay anymore. She moves back to her empty apartment, now devoid of her ghostly friend. Manager O calls Kang, who has just landed, to express concern that they must have miscalculated the days. Kang is initially left in suspense, but soon gets a call from Ji-hyun's mom, informing him that Ji-hyun has woken up. Ji-hyun's miraculous recovery baffles doctors, and she undergoes tests. Kang arrives just as she's in the exam room and shares the good news that his father has agreed to invest in the company. Her parents are overwhelmed with gratitude. After Ji-hyun's tests, Kang visits her in her hospital room, but his excitement fades when he notices she isn't as thrilled to see him. She bluntly asks why In-jung and Minho aren't there, making her family uneasy. Outside the room, Kang, Ji-hyun's mom, and Seo-woo agree to keep news about Ji-hyun's father's surgery and business troubles from her. Mom promises to tell Ji-hyun about Kang's help, but he sadly dismisses it as unimportant. Meanwhile, Minho continues with his malicious plans for Haemoto's takeover and prepares to resign the next day, despite his actions being exposed and causing discontent within the company. His villainy is now widely known, and other employees express their disdain. Instead of going to the hospital, Minho visits Yi-kyung's place but finds her there, and she tells him to leave, stating that Ji-hyun is no longer connected to her. At the hospital, Ji-hyun's parents fill her in on what happened while she was in a coma, joking about who spent more time by her side. Ji-hyun remains surprised by Kang's devotion, but distances herself from him, treating him like a distant acquaintance. Kang leaves, feeling conflicted. Later, at heaven, he confesses to Manager O that although Ji-hyun's recovery should make him happy, he's saddened by her lack of memory of their time together. He reflects on their growing connection over the past 47 days. In her lonely apartment, Yi-kyung reflects on Yisu's passing and waits for him to come back, feeling more isolated with Ji-hyun's recovery. Despite Yisu's presence beside her, she can't see him, and her loneliness deepens. The next morning, Kang visits Yi-kyung with the news of Ji-hyun's recovery, but also the sad reality that Ji-hyun likely won't remember her. He offers Yi a job at his restaurant, but she declines, explaining that she's waiting for someone. She returns Kang's bracelet, which Ji-hyun had asked her to give him, revealing that it was his mother's, something Kang had never known. Yi-kyung relays Ji-hyun's message to Kang, apologizing for not returning the bracelet sooner and expressing gratitude for his support during her difficult time. Meanwhile, Minho is shocked to learn that Daddy Shun secured funds, which undermines his plans. His partner accuses him of being driven by greed after being named beneficiary in the will. Minho calls his mole, Ki-jun, to investigate the source of the funds and learns that Kang secured an investor in the States, which Minho didn't know. Ki-jun defends himself, stating he's capable of advancing without Minho's help. Soon after, Minho receives a call from the district prosecutor requesting his presence. In-jung waits for Minho at a lunch spot, but when he doesn't show, she ends up eating alone and crying. Meanwhile, Minho drinks with his friend Jin-young, feeling bitter about his situation. Jin-young, unable to watch Minho spiral, decides to quit. Minho, however, insists he won't go down like this. The next morning, In-jung visits Minho to say goodbye, informing him she's returning to Jinan. She apologizes and offers to help if needed. Minho responds coldly, claiming she's making it impossible for him to apologize, which reflects his twisted mindset. Kang visits Ji-hyun at the hospital with pink roses, declaring he'll come every day, much to her confusion. Meanwhile, her mom subtly tests her memory about her friend Yi-kyung, but Ji-hyun doesn't remember her. After physical therapy, Kang walks Ji-hyun through the garden and asks why she's uncomfortable with his attention. He also inquires about her 47 days in a coma, asking if she had dreams or if he appeared in them. Ji-hyun, being defensive, responds that she doesn't need to share those details with him. Minho continues lurking around, getting a bit too comfortable in his role. Ji-hyun insists on seeing In-jung, despite her mother and Seo making excuses. Eventually, they convince In-jung to visit, asking her to act normal, but In-jung struggles with the idea. Ji-hyun also questions Kang about his daily hospital visits, and he casually explains that he can manage his work without actually doing much. Ji-hyun tells Kang she'd wishes he'd use his architectural talent more, but Kang reveals he feels he has no one to share it with. He asks if she would watch him if he worked harder. Before she can respond, Mom interrupts with In-jung's arrival. Ji-hyun asks for a moment alone and Kang steps out. When In-jung enters, Ji-hyun recalls a dream where In-jung took off her shoes for her during the engagement ceremony. She interprets it as In-jung putting their friendship above pride despite the ceremony. Ji-hyun grows emotional as she speaks to In-jung, seemingly unaware of her betrayal, and sends her away to sob alone. Meanwhile, Yoo-soo is eager to meet Yi-kyung but is held back by a 1-week penalty. After a conversation with his granny Scransambe, he learns he'll be allowed to meet Yi-kyung tomorrow as his 5-year term ends. Yi-kyung, going through old letters from Yoo-soo, receives a new one inviting her to meet him, and she prepares eagerly for the long-awaited reunion, using the beauty products Ji-hyun left for her. Yoo-soo and Yi-kyung reunite, with Yoo-soo smiling and telling her she hasn't changed. After confirming he's real, Yi-kyung throws herself into his arms, crying, questioning why he came so late. Yoo-soo explains that it was only now that it was his time to return. He takes her to the site of his accident, revealing it was a place he had once been excited about, feeling trapped in his old life. He recalls how he wanted to show her how he felt through actions, though she was like his hometown. He retrieves the rings they once buried and places them on their fingers. They then head to an amusement park together. Yoo-soo takes Yi-kyung to an amusement park, fulfilling a promise he made to bring her there for her birthday. They enjoy a sweet, happy evening together. Afterward, he takes her back home and asks her to go grocery shopping while he stays behind to clean and remodel her room. Dr. No stops by, confused by the signs of new changes, but is warned off by Yoo-soo in his usual cheeky manner. When Yi-kyung returns, she's initially worried Yoo-soo has left, but is relieved to find him still there. She questions why he bothered with the room since she plans to leave with him, and he simply says he prefers staying in a clean space. Yoo-soo watches Yi-kyung sleep, as if memorizing her face, knowing their time together is limited. The next morning, while they walk, Yi-kyung is amazed that he's still there, but Yoo-soo's mood is darker. He tells her that after waiting 5 years to meet her and confesses love, his feelings have changed. He says that although he loved her, he no longer does, and he wants her to forget him and be happy without him. Yi-kyung refuses to accept this and wants to go with him, but Yoo-soo explains that death means they can't be together, and for her to be happy, he has to let her go. He expresses that if she's unhappy, it will torment him, and in the next life, he'll be a bitter, unloved person. Yoo-soo tells Yi-kyung to throw away the ring, as it no longer holds meaning and was only there to resolve their past misunderstanding. He removes his ring and throws it into the water, telling her how precious she was to him and how she'll become someone else's cherished person. He asks her to promise that she'll be happy for his sake, so he can leave the world without regrets and begin anew in the next life. He kisses her and walks away, holding back tears as she watches him disappear. Yi-kyung sobs, feeling guilt and sorrow, apologizing for never being able to repay him for his love. Min-ho visits his mother's hospital, reflecting on his past regrets and plans. However, he's arrested by the police and asks for a moment with his mother. She doesn't recognize him at first, but eventually remembers and warmly embraces him, crying that she knew he'd become important. Min-ho breaks down, showing his vulnerable side. Despite being led away in handcuffs, his emotional moment with his mother stands in stark contrast to his usual villainous demeanor. During his interrogation, he denies In-jung's involvement, taking full responsibility for his actions. Meanwhile, Yi-kyung reflects on Yoo-soo's last wish for her to live happily. She recalls Ji-hyun's similar request and decides to visit the hospital, though initially hesitant due to Ji-hyun's memory loss. Yi-kyung is surprised when Ji-hyun steps out and sees her. Ji-hyun surprises Yi-kyung by calling her Uni and hugging her, revealing that she remembers her despite previously not showing any recognition. Yi-kyung is confused when Ji-hyun doesn't remember Han Kang, but Ji-hyun cryptically responds that she's pretending not to remember him because she believes she's going to die again soon. This shocking statement leaves Yi-kyung baffled and concerned. Ji-hyun tells Yi-kyung that she remembers both her and Kang from her 49 days, but confesses that she's going to die soon. Later, in the hospital, Ji-hyun sees the scheduler and realizes something is wrong. She recalls her 49 days and wonders why the scheduler is appearing to her. He confirms bluntly that this is her last cruel gift, and offers her a chance to refuse it. But she trembles and asks if this means she's going to die. The scheduler reveals to Ji-hyun that her death is already scheduled for 6 days from now, a date determined since her birth. He explains that because she experienced the 49 days and earned her 3 tears, the powers that be have granted her the ability to remember her time on the other side, but she has the choice to forget. Ji-hyun is devastated and through tears expresses her anger and frustration, knowing that nothing will change her fate. The scheduler, clearly troubled by the news, consoles her, but ultimately she must face her inevitable death despite everything she endured. Ji-hyun expresses her frustration at the unfairness of Ji-hyun's fate, having to die after everything she went through. Ji-hyun, now much more mature after her 49 days, shares a new perspective. She reflects on how her journey allowed her to find love, protect her father's company, and gain clarity about her life, something she might not have done if she had died without experiencing those moments. Ji-hyun explains that she's pretending not to remember to maintain the image of the naive, sweet version of herself for the people in her life, but she couldn't hide it when she saw Ji-hyun. Ji-hyun and Ji-hyun share a touching moment, sitting together and reconnecting. Ji-hyun reminds Ji-hyun that Kang remembers the 49 days and asked her to share her feelings with him before leaving. However, Ji-hyun decides that telling him will only cause more pain as she's meant to die, and knowing the truth will make it harder for both of them. From Ji-hyun's experience, Ji-hyun has learned that the living must continue living. She wants to leave as Kang's friend so he can carry on after she's gone, making the situation even more heartbreaking. Kang visits Minho in prison, telling him to repent and serve his time, hoping one day he can return to the person he once respected. Meanwhile, Ji-hyun goes home to her parents, forcing a smile while hiding her tears, deeply saddened by their happiness. Knowing it will soon be shattered again, the bittersweet moments between her and her loved ones, knowing they'll face more heartache, emotionally wrecks the viewer. The next morning, Ji-hyun arrives at Ji-hyun's house with a picnic basket. As she walks down the familiar stairs, she pauses to touch the rail, savoring the simple act of feeling the world she couldn't before. Ji-hyun helps Ji-hyun prepare a kimbap lunch, which Ji-hyun takes to Kang. She playfully asks to borrow his car MP3 player, and then jokingly says, Kang is taken aback but agrees to pretend to be her boyfriend for the day, with the condition she plays his girlfriend the next day. They have a fun and adorable picnic, play fighting like kids. During the playful moment, Ji-hyun's bracelet falls out of Kang's pocket, and she pretends to be surprised, asking if he's had it all this time. Ji-hyun tells Kang that the bracelet is actually his mother's, and that they were close when she was in high school. Flashback to those days where Ji-hyun would visit Kang's mother and chat with her about Kang. Ji-hyun had once asked why Kang was so mean to his mom, and his mother explained that sometimes it's better to let someone misunderstand to spare them pain. Ji-hyun had later repeated those words to Kang when she quit even before earning her first tear. In the present, Kang realizes that Ji-hyun had shared his mother's wisdom with him back then. He quotes Ji-hyun's words from her 49 days, acknowledging that hiding feelings is harder than not knowing them. This stops Ji-hyun in her tracks because the truth of her own situation mirrors those words. Kang then takes her to a wishing statue where she tosses a coin and makes a wish. While Kang watches her with an expression of deep sadness, Ji-hyun visits Kang and reveals the truth about Ji-hyun's condition, admitting that she wasn't supposed to tell him. But she couldn't bear to watch Ji-hyun suffer alone. She understands Ji-hyun's wish to go out smiling and to spare her loved ones the pain. Kang, with tears in his eyes, confesses that his greatest hope is for Ji-hyun to live, even if it means never seeing her again. He just wants her to live. This moment reveals the depth of Kang's feelings and his willingness to let go for Ji-hyun's sake. In a heartbreaking moment, Kang and Ji-hyun each make a wish. Kang wishes for Ji-hyun to live and stay by his side, while Ji-hyun wishes for Kang to forget her. They share a bittersweet smile before parting. Kang reassures himself that he did the right thing, but the sadness is palpable. Meanwhile, Ji-hyun spends a tender moment with her parents, expressing her gratitude before suddenly collapsing from a sharp pain. As her soul leaves her body, the scheduler appears, ready to take her. The tragic inevitability of it all hits hard. In her final months, Ji-hyun acknowledges the scheduler, asking if he's been waiting for her all this time. As she takes his hand and they head toward the elevator, she looks back one last time at her father, grieving her lifeless body. The scheduler, silently guiding her, offers his hand for their farewell. She smiles at him in gratitude, and he acknowledges her with a tearful smile before opening the door to her next journey. As the elevator doors close, they share a silent, emotional goodbye, leaving the scheduler alone in the end. Ji-hyun's death devastates her family and loved ones. Her parents mourn over her covered body, and Kang rushes in crying. In-jung and Min-ho are also struck by grief, each showing regret in their own way. A simple but meaningful funeral follows, with her ashes being buried under a tree planted in her name, symbolizing new life. In-jung watches from a distance, filled with remorse, while Min-ho regrets his actions from his prison cell. Kang, Ik-young, and Seo will honor her memory with heartfelt tears. Later, her parents discover that Ji-hyun had prepared for her death, realizing that her final moments were spent saying goodbye. The emotional moment with her parents, especially her mother, is deeply moving and heartbreaking. Kang, still grieving Ji-hyun, finds a letter she wrote to him, asking him to return a box of belongings to Ik-young. The letter reveals Ji-hyun's final wish for Kang to be a friend to Ik-young, as he was to her. This gesture is both heartbreaking and beautiful, a last act of love and care. Kang delivers the box to Ik-young, who discovers a key inside that leads them to Yusu's abandoned music studio. Inside his locker, Ik-young finds old music notebooks and a child's backpack which holds a pink shoe and a bank book memories from and when she was abandoned at the orphanage. The flashback reveals Yusu's actions that day, further tying him to Ik-young's past and her painful history. Yusu opens a bank account in Ik-young's name, claiming he needs her student ID for something. Over time, he makes deposits into the account, each accompanied by a note that forms a letter or song lyrics. The notes express his love, promises, and dedication to her, building a dream of their future together despite hardships. When Ik-young reads these messages, she is moved to tears. In his final note, Yusu reveals that Ik-young is his guardian and the one person who has given him a reason to live, emphasizing how much she means to him. Ik-young, moved by Yusu's heartfelt messages in the bank account, clutches the letter to her heart, crying. Yusu watches her, also crying. Kang visits Ji-hyun's parents, finding them in a heated argument. Mom clings to old photos of Ji-hyun, while Dad insists they must move on. Kang picks up a photo he doesn't recognize and asks about it. Mom explains it's a picture of Ji-hyun's older sister, Ji-min, who was kidnapped as a child and never found. Kang notices that the little girl's shoes in the photo are identical to the ones Ik-young had taken out of Yusu's locker, realizing a connection between the two stories. Ik-young, hesitant at first, hands over the backpack when Ji-hyun's mom insists. Mom is immediately overwhelmed with emotion as she recognizes a star drawing on the backpack and the shoe inside, confirming that Ik-young is actually Ji-hyun's long-lost older sister, Ji-min. She tearfully exclaims that Ji-min was alive all along. Yusu, watching from a distance, is visibly shocked by this unexpected revelation. The plot takes a twist when Ji-hyun asks the scheduler about the 2 remaining tears she earned before her final journey. He reveals that Ik-young wasn't one of them, leaving a gap in the story. Flashbacks show In-jung, who once tried to kill Ji-hyun by tampering with her respirator. However, Ji-hyun's spirit calls out to her, which causes In-jung to stop, reflecting on her actions. Seeing her own reflection, In-jung is filled with regret and remorse for what she had become. Realizing that her actions were not out of malice toward Ji-hyun, but her own internal struggle, she kneels and apologizes, acknowledging her wrongs. In-jung, feeling the weight of her actions, confronts Min-ho about his feelings for Ji-hyun, accusing him of prioritizing his own interests over Ji-hyun's father's surgery. Min-ho refuses to acknowledge his attachment to them and insists on continuing his harmful path. In-jung, concerned for his well-being, goes to Min-ho's mother, asking for the file he entrusted to her. Initially hesitant, Min-ho's mother eventually agrees, sending the file to the prosecutor in an attempt to stop Min-ho from spiraling further into destructive behavior. In-jung, reflecting on the past, expresses her wish to turn back time to when she and Ji-hyun shared joyful moments. She sheds a tear, unknowingly giving Ji-hyun her third and final tear, which brings Ji-hyun back to life. The scheduler reveals that In-jung was the source of this final tear, and Ji-hyun, full of genuine happiness, smiles, appreciating that In-jung's feelings were sincere despite everything. As Ji-hyun prepares to head to the elevator, Young mourns, regretful of the things she couldn't do for Ji-hyun, unaware that they were sisters. Yisu observes her, realizing the profound impact of his Sunbae's words. The flashback shows Granny Sunbae asking the scheduler if his wish remains the same, to give Young the rings and express his love. The scheduler dismisses the idea, having grown beyond being a lovesick fool. He then realizes Granny Sunbae deliberately restored his memory early to prevent him from wasting his wish on something trivial. She confirms his insight and hints that she broke the barrier between Young and Ji-hyun for a greater purpose, suggesting that their connection might extend into the next life. In the present, Yusu bids a tearful farewell to Young, telling her to live happily for Ji-hyun's sake. He tries to touch her face one last time but pulls away, smiling as a tear falls before disappearing. He completes his journey and vanishes, leaving behind a sense of peace. In the following days, Young starts living again, making changes like eating rice instead of ramen and seeking a new job. Meanwhile, Kang visits the river to say his final goodbye to Ji-hyun. 2 years after Ji-hyun's passing, Kang reflects on Ji-hyun's final wish, understanding now why she chose to leave without saying goodbye. He acknowledges how her 49 days brought healing and restoration to those she left behind. Now in Jinan has a flashback to their high school days, adding another layer of emotional depth to the story. In-jung, now reflecting on Ji-hyun's memory, visits Minho in prison after 2 years. She updates him on his mother's situation, telling him she's been moved to a hospital in Jinan. Despite his wishes for her to move on, she insists on caring for his mother until he's released, taking responsibility for the situation. Minho acknowledges his own actions, and after a tense conversation, finally expresses regret, apologizing to In-jung. Kang is now working at a construction site, overseeing a building he designed, much to everyone's surprise. Young, on her last day at Heaven, is moving on while manager Oh and his wife prepare for a baby. COO is happily dating Kijun. Dr. No makes an unwanted return, but thankfully Kang shows up to save the day, bringing relief to viewers who feared the worst. It's hinted that Dr. No might be paired with a waitress, which offers a lighter conclusion to his character arcs. Young confirms her plans with Kang for the next day and heads to dinner with her parents. She's preparing to work at a new resort in Hamido, a project Kang is designing. While the storyline of losing and finding a daughter might not be everyone's favorite, it's heartwarming to see Young finally with a supportive family, with her parents doting on her and reminiscing about Ji-hyun. On their last day before leaving for Hamido, Young and Kang visit Ji-hyun and Yusu's graves, where they are buried side by side with identical trees. This poetic gesture highlights the bond between them, both in life and the afterlife. Kang and Young place a bouquet of pink roses by Ji-hyun and Yusu's graves, standing together as the two living individuals reflect on the two departed. In a voiceover, their thoughts reveal their gratitude and growth. Young, Ji-hyun, Kang has been a good to me, just as you hoped, and because of your bright spirit, I've adjusted well to life. Kang, Ji-hyun, despite knowing death is inevitable, people live as though it's not. Your 49 days showed me how to live as if each day is precious, and I've witnessed changes that wouldn't have happened without you knowing your time was limited. Young, these are the two who changed our lives and left us beautifully. Kang, because of the 49 days with them, we cherish today as if it were our last. Young, because I met Yusu. Kang, because I met you, Ji-hyun. Young, I was happy. Kang, I was happy. The drama ends here.